Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francis, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. So, this week's episode is actually coming from a comment someone left on one of my videos. And I want to read it exactly the way she wrote it because I think there's a lot here. So she says, really enjoying your comment. Thank you. Since you put it out there, if you'd be interested in doing a topic on phone transparency and how to navigate your partner networking and building relationships with attractive people and expecting full trust and respect of their privacy in light of interacting with people as mentioned, and maybe mixing and getting defensive over questions regarding their private life as it pertains to attractive acquaintances. That's a mouthful. Now listen. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't have a perfect answer to this. And I know that might sound strange because usually when I talk about dating and relationships, I try to give you something clear, a way to think about things that you can actually use in your own life. But you see, this one's really difficult. There isn't one rule that works for every person, every relationship, every history, and even every nervous system. For one couple, phone transparency might be completely normal. They both might know each other's passwords. They both leave their phones around, and neither person sees it as a big deal. For another couple, that same setup might feel invasive. One person might think, if you need access to my phone to feel safe, then you don't trust me. And depending on their relationship, they may have a point. This is where things get messy because we're not only talking about phones, we're talking about fear, about trust. We're talking about how two people define respect, privacy, transparency, and commitment. Now, here's the thing. Before we get into all of that, I want to touch on one specific part of the comment. See, she mentions specifically attractive people. And see, that matters. Because most people don't become jealous when their partner is talking to someone they don't see as a threat. The discomfort usually begins when the other person feels like competition. And in this context, competition almost always has something to do with either sex, desirability, or the fear of being replaced. I've talked about this before. The conversation around men and women being friends changes very quickly when sex is removed from the equation. A woman may have a male best friend, and her boyfriend might feel uncomfortable about that until he finds out that the friend is gay. Suddenly, the emotional alarm quiets down. Why? Because in his mind, sex has been completely removed from the situation. A man may have a female friend, and his girlfriend may feel threatened until she meets the woman and doesn't find her attractive. Once that happened, the friend may no longer feel like competition. That's uncomfortable to say out loud, but it's true. A lot of jealousy is based on the fear that your partner may want someone else, choose someone else, sleep with someone else, or compare you to someone else and decide that that person is better. So when someone says, I'm uncomfortable with you building relationships with attractive people, what they may really be saying is, I'm scared this person has access to a part of you that I don't want them to have. Now, granted, that fear may be understandable, and it may also be unfair. Attraction is subjective. See, someone with low self-esteem can look at the world and see competition everywhere. If you feel insecure in your body, your age, your value, your desirability, or your place in someone's life, almost anyone can start to look like a threat. The problem may not be that your partner is talking to an attractive person. The problem may be that you just feel replaceable. And if you feel replaceable, that's a much, much deeper conversation than phone transparency. Because on the surface, this episode sounds like it's about phones, messages, DMs, coworkers, networking, social media privacy, and attractive acquaintances. Underneath that, we're really talking about how safe two people feel with each other. So let's start with reassurance. If you're in a relationship with someone and they feel insecure. I would like to think your instinct should be to care. You may not agree with how they're seeing the situation. You may know with absolute certainty that you haven't done anything wrong. You may even feel frustrated because the concern seems bigger than the reality. But here's the problem. Dismissing them usually makes things worse. Love isn't only about being innocent, it's also about being considerate. Trust, transparency, honesty, and communication are part of the foundation of a relationship. Without those things, people start filling in the blanks. And when people fill in blanks while they're scared, the story rarely becomes kinder. If your partner asks a fair question and you become defensive, resist answering, or act like it's an insult, the original concern is going to escalate. An overthinker won't only focus on what they asked about. Now they'll start thinking about your reaction. They'll wonder why you got irritated so quickly, why a simple question created tension, and why the conversation suddenly felt unsafe. This is where a lot of people damage their own relationships without realizing it. They believe they're defending their privacy, but their partner is experiencing resistance. They believe they're standing up for themselves, but their partner now feels avoidance. They say, "Trust me," while acting in a way that makes trusting you harder. But if a simple answer can bring peace, me personally, I don't understand why you'd turn that moment into a fight. If the person you're dating asks, "Hey, who is that?" or "Can you help me understand this?" the way you respond matters. It can go two ways. You can make the relationship feel safer, or you can create tension. People pay attention to how you handle their discomfort. If they come to you with a concern and your first reaction is defensiveness or irritation, the answer itself almost stops mattering. What they remember is how unsafe it felt to ask. That's why reassurance matters. I'm not talking about constant reassurance where someone needs proof every 5 minutes that you still love them. I mean human, normal, like reassurance, the kind that says, "I see that this bothers you, and I care enough to talk about it like an adult." A lot of people want the benefits of relationships without the emotional responsibility that comes with being chosen by another person. They want loyalty, affection, attention, sex, support, and partnership. And then the moment their partner feels unsure, they treat that uncertainty like it's an inconvenience. Now, honestly, that's so immature. People come into relationships with history. They've been hurt. They've been lied to. They have had experiences that shaped how they see love, trust, and safety. Those histories don't get to run the relationship, but at the same time, they should be handled with care. Now here, I'll give you an example from my own life. So this was a long while ago. I was dating someone, and anyone who knows me knows that I've always been the person people came to for advice. That's been true for most of my life. Men came to me, women came to me, friends came to me. People would call me, text me, message me on social media, and talk to me about whatever they were going through. Now, at first, the woman that I was dating, she seemed okay with it. And then it caught up to her that women are messaging me. They'd call, text, or message me privately, and it started to bother her. But I understood it. From her point of view, I can see how that would make her feel uncomfortable. You're dating someone and women are reaching out to him for advice, support, conversation, or whatever else. Even when nothing is happening, the imagination can start filling in blanks. So I tried to reassure her. In the situations where the person messaging me was actually a friend, I came up with what I thought a reasonable solution. Instead of only saying, "No, she's just a friend," I offered to set up a dinner or a drink so that she could meet her herself. To me, that made sense. Rather than asking her to trust only my explanation, I wanted her to see the energy for herself. She could sit with us, talk to her, maybe even make a new friend, and understand that this person and I were exactly what I said we were, just friends. That to me, is reassurance. It's me saying, I care that this bothers you, and I'm willing to help you feel more secure. And I think that matters. When someone is trying to build something with you, they shouldn't feel like they have to suffer quietly just to prove they're mature. Clarity can be kind. Patience can be kind. Making the unknown feel less threatening can be kind. But reassurance doesn't always work. See, there was another situation where I was dating someone else, and she had an issue with a woman I knew. Again, this was someone I considered a friend. I explained the situation, tried to reassure, and gave her the option to meet the person so that she could see the dynamic for herself. This time, none of that helped. The woman I was dating believed my so-called friend was interested in me and wanted something more. Now, here's the thing. Maybe she was right. Maybe she wasn't. That part is almost beside the point because I was dating her. I was trying to provide her with reassurance. I was choosing to spend time with her. I was trying to build something with her. At some point, reassurance has a limit. A person can offer patience, clarity, honesty, and even an introduction. But nobody can spend the rest of their relationship proving that every person around them is harmless. That's where this situation changed. See, she no longer wanted reassurance. She wanted control. She wanted me to cut this person off. And on top of that, some men she thought were bad influences too. That crosses a line for me. Because now we're no longer talking about helping someone feel secure. We're talking about allowing someone else's insecurity to decide who I was allowed to speak to, who I was allowed to spend time with, and what parts of my life were acceptable. And I have no interest in living like that. So obviously I ended it. And I understand jealousy. I understand fear. I understand that when you care about someone, the thought of losing them can make you see danger where there may not be any danger. But a relationship cannot be built on one person shrinking their life until the other person's anxiety finally feels comfortable. Because that comfort doesn't last. The target changes. A friend becomes a problem, then a coworker, then an ex, then someone who liked a photo, then someone who laughed a little too hard at something you said. Eventually, the relationship stops being about trust and becomes a permanent control. See, now, that brings us to the other side of the conversation. A loving partner should care if you feel insecure. A healthy partner should offer reassurance when the concern is reasonable. And if you're building something serious with someone, honesty and transparency need to be part of the agreement. But insecurity can become unfair. That can be hard to hear because insecurity sounds vulnerable. It sounds wounded. It sounds like something we should meet with compassion. And we should. But compassion doesn't mean surrendering your autonomy. There's a difference between needing reassurance and needing control. Reassurance asks for understanding. Control demands that someone reshape their life so discomfort never has to be felt. The jealous person may not see it that way. In their mind, they're trying to feel safe. They're trying to protect the relationship. They're trying to prevent something painful from happening, but the person on the other end may start feeling that they're living under supervision. And once someone feels supervised, they begin editing themselves. They think before answering a text. They replay harmless interactions before mentioning them. They avoid certain stories because they don't want the argument. Over time, honesty starts feeling like too much work. And now that becomes dangerous. When insecurity makes honesty feel unsafe, it can create the very secrecy it's afraid of. Now, I'm not saying avoidance is right. What I'm saying is this is how couples get there. One person asks from fear, the other person answers from defensiveness. Suspicions rise, defensiveness hardens, and now both people are protecting themselves instead of trying to understand each other. That's how trust disappears. It doesn't always disappear because someone cheated. Someone's trust dies because the relationship becomes exhausting. So now, if you're the person who feels insecure, you have to ask yourself a very honest question. Am I reacting to what is actually happening, or am I reacting to what I'm afraid could happen? Is this legitimate, or did this bump a bruise from the past? Attraction, threat, and discomfort are all subjective. Someone with low self-esteem may see half the world as competition. A person who has been cheated on may read danger into a normal conversation. When comparison becomes a habit, even people who aren't trying to be threats can start to feel threatening. The feelings will be real, but that doesn't automatically make the interpretation accurate. You can tell your partner what you're feeling. You can ask for support. You can ask for clarity. At some point, though, you have to be willing to look inward and figure out why the situation bothers you so much. Maybe the issue is their behavior. Maybe it's your past, your self-esteem. Maybe it's the way you've been taught to think about men or women and how they can or cannot be friends. Maybe social media has shown you 1,000 stories about people cheating with a coworker, a friend, or an ex, and now that outcome feels normal. See, the last one matters more than people realize. We are constantly being trained by stories, romantic comedies, movies, TV, TikTok, Instagram, podcasts, Reddit threads, comment sections, all of it. We see the friend who was secretly in love the whole time. We see the ex come back and ruin the relationship. We see the coworker become the affair partner. We see the don't worry about her person become exactly the person someone should have to worry about. These stories stick because they're dramatic, but drama is not the same as real life. Do these things happen? Of course they do. Some people keep friends around because they like the attention. Some people are emotionally attached to their exes. Some people pretend someone is just a friend while fully knowing there's something else there. Those people are dangerous to date because they create confusion and then act shocked when their partner feels confused. But we have to be careful about taking the loudest stories and treating them like they're the standard. Most people are not living inside a movie. Most people are not secretly waiting for the perfect moment to confess their love to a friend while dating someone else. A lot of people are simply living their lives, going to work, raising kids, maintaining friendships, and just trying to get through the day without every normal interaction becoming a threat. That's why this topic is so difficult. The person asking questions may be too insecure. The person avoiding answers may be too secretive. Reassurance can be loving in one situation and controlling in another. Privacy can protect autonomy, but it can also hide behavior that would hurt the relationship if it came into the light. There isn't one simple answer because the truth depends on the people involved. Now, let's talk about exes for a second, because this is another version of the same issue. I've spoke about women dating divorced men who have good relationship with their ex-wives because they share children. I've seen women become jealous of that, and honestly, it boggles my mind a bit. I can understand the feeling. If you're dating a man and he's communicating with his ex-wife, seeing her at kids' events, coordinating schedules, or even being friendly with her, I could see how that might poke at an insecurity. But let's think about this logically. The person went through separation. They went through a divorce. They dealt with lawyers, pain, conflict, money, custody, and everything else. That comes with ending a marriage. What makes you think he's automatically running back to his ex because they can speak to each other like adults? Most people forget that an ex is usually an ex for a reason. If he wanted to be with her, there's a good chance he would still be with her. If he's choosing to spend time with you, build something with you, introduce you into his life, and make room for you, that should count for something. Now, I know there are exceptions. Some people are still attached to their exes. Some people say they're done while staying emotionally involved. Co-parenting can even become an excuse to keep a door open when the relationship should be over. But exceptions should not become the rule. This works the other way too. A man dating a divorced woman may feel uncomfortable with her ex-husband still being in the picture. He may see texts about the kids, start wondering if something else is going on. He may watch them communicate well and feel like he's competing with history. But a healthy co-parenting relationship is usually a good sign. It means this person has the emotional maturity to put the children first. It means that they can communicate without turning every interaction into a war. It means they don't need bitterness as proof that they've moved on. Sometimes maturity looks suspicious to insecure people. That's an uncomfortable truth. Again, it's true. A person who can be respectful to an ex may actually be showing you emotional stability. They're showing you that they don't need to destroy someone just because the relationship ended. They're showing you they can handle complicated situations with maturity. And if children are involved, that matters even more. The kids didn't ask for the divorce. They didn't ask for the separation. They didn't ask to become part of a new partner's insecurity. Adults have to be adults. If you're dating someone with children, their ex may exist in their life in some capacity. That still requires boundaries. There should be respect, clarity, and an obvious difference between healthy communication and emotional dependency. But when two people are simply communicating like adults for the sake of their kids, jealousy can become destructive. The same principle applies to friends of the opposite sex. People have very different beliefs here. Some are completely comfortable with it. Others see it as a disrespectful inside a serious relationship. There are people who genuinely believe men and women can be friends, while others assume one person is always waiting for an opportunity. And this is where we come back to the blueprint. Because the answer to this episode is personal. See, the thing is, I can't tell you how you should act. You need to know what you can live with. You need to know what makes you feel safe. You need to know what feels respectful to you in a relationship. And you also need to recognize when your own fears are asking for too much. The blueprint is not only about whether someone wants kids, drinks too much, wants marriage, or has a lifestyle that lines up with yours. It's also about the emotional rules of the relationship. Phone access, friendship with the opposite sex, exes, privacy, autonomy, reassurance, transparency, and what each person considers disrespectful all belongs in that conversation. And yes, you should be having that conversation early. Because imagine one person believes, if we're together, your phone should never be hidden from me. Well, the other person believes, my phone is personal, and your need to access it means you don't trust me. See, that's not a small disagreement. That is a difference in how both people define trust. That's a difference in values. Now imagine one person believes close friendships with the opposite sex are completely normal, while the other person sees them as disrespectful. That isn't a tiny preference. That is a relationship value. The same problem happens when one person sees autonomy as healthy and the other experiences it as distance. Neither person may be trying to hurt the other, but they're still going to hurt each other if they keep pretending the differences don't matter. This is where people waste so much time. They date, build feelings, get attached, and discover months later that their definitions don't match. What could have been an honest compatibility conversation in the beginning becomes a painful argument after emotions are involved. That's why I always talk about communication and acceptance. You have to communicate what you want, what you need, what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel uncomfortable, and what kind of relationship you're actually trying to build. Then the other person has to decide whether they can accept that. And you have to now do the same for them. If transparency is a core value for you, dating someone who experiences transparency as control will probably make both of you suffer. If autonomy is one of their core values, your need for access may feel suffocating to them, even if your intentions are only to feel safe. That doesn't make either person evil. It may simply mean the relationship structure doesn't fit. One person will feel constantly questioned, the other will feel constantly unsafe. One will feel trapped, while the other feels confused. That is not a foundation. That is a slow argument waiting to happen. Now, let me be clear about something. I don't love the phrase private life inside a serious relationship. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me. When you say private life, it sounds like you have a separate world your partner isn't allowed to enter. Like you have an escape plan as part of you that is still living as if the relationship may not last. Now, I do believe in personal autonomy, but that's different. Autonomy means I'm still a person. I still have thoughts, friendships, work relationships, and my own identity. Commitment should bring two people closer, but it shouldn't erase either person. Just because I have autonomy doesn't mean my partner can't become a part of all of those relationships. A hidden world is something else entirely. A hidden world says, there are parts of my life you're not allowed to access or understand, and if you ask about them, I'm going to make you feel like the problem. And to me, that's dangerous, and frankly, I think it's really unfair. I mean, you're trying to build a life with somebody. So maybe the better question isn't, should my partner have privacy? Maybe the better question is, what kind of privacy are we talking about? Personal space and secrecy are not the same thing. Autonomy is healthy when it protects individuality, but it becomes suspicious when it functions like an escape route. Dignity deserves respect. Behavior that would damage the relationship if it came into the light deserves scrutiny. That's the conversation. And again, there is no universal answer. Some couples share passwords without any issue. Others would find that invasive. A friendship with an ex may be healthy in one relationship and completely inappropriate in another. Close friends of the opposite sex may feel normal to one person and deeply uncomfortable to someone else. None of this is automatically right or wrong. And that's an important thing because there's a lot of people out there, this is going back to if men and women can be friends, a lot of people out there that think it is wrong and they put their foot down and they're stuck on it. The problem begins when people hide their true position because they're afraid the other person will leave. It grows when someone pretends to be comfortable with something they secretly resent. It becomes toxic when pain is used as permission to control another person, or privacy becomes a shield for behavior someone knows that would hurt their partner. That's why honesty matters so much. If you can't date someone with close friends of the opposite sex, say that. Don't pretend you're fine with it and punish them later. If you need an open phone relationship to feel safe, admit that early and let the other person decide if they can live with it. And if you value autonomy, be honest about that too. Let the person you're dating know that you don't want to be questioned about every conversation, every message, and every interaction. See all of this? This is the blueprint. The blueprint is not about pretending to be easygoing so someone likes you. It's about knowing yourself well enough to stop negotiating against your own needs. And I know some people may hear this and think, well, if I'm too honest, I might scare them away. Good. Let them be scared away because the wrong person leaving early, it's not a loss, it's time saved. You don't want someone falling in love with a version of you that isn't real. You don't want to be 6 months in, emotionally attached, trying to explain something that should have been discussed in the first few weeks. You don't want resentment growing in the background because you pretended something didn't bother you. This is why we need to make the gray area less gray. And that comes through communication. If you like someone, say it. If a friend has feelings for you and you know it, be honest with the person you're dating. Deal with your own feelings before entering a relationship with someone else. And when an ex is still emotionally important to you in a way that could interfere with your next relationship, don't drag a new person into that mess while pretending everything is clean. None of this requires perfection, but it does require maturity. And maybe that's the real answer to the comment. The issue isn't really the phone. The issue is maturity. Because mature people can have uncomfortable conversations without turning them into wars. They can offer reassurance without feeling humiliated by it. They can admit when insecurity is coming from inside them. They can set boundaries without turning those boundaries into control. And mature people understand that trust is not built by demanding it. Trust is built by creating an environment where both people can breathe. So, where do you draw the line? You draw it where your values, your comfort, and your self-respect meet. That line will be different for everybody. The key is knowing where your line is before you build a relationship with someone whose line is completely different. For me personally, I'll reassure someone. I'll answer questions. I'll even introduce people if that helps create security. But I will not, under any circumstance, let someone control my life because their insecurity needs a smaller world to feel safe. For someone else, that line might be different, and that's okay. The point is not for everyone to agree on the same rule. The point is for two people in a relationship to agree on the same reality. Because when one person is living by transparency and the other is living by privacy, pain is almost guaranteed. When one person needs autonomy and the other needs access, misunderstanding becomes part of the relationship. When reassurance feels like love to one person and control to the other, the same fight will keep showing up in different forms. So talk about it. Have the uncomfortable conversation about phones, friends, exes, coworkers, respect, discomfort, boundaries, and what each of you can actually accept. And when someone tells you who they are, for God's sakes, believe them. If they need more transparency than you're willing to give, don't shame them for it. Decide whether you can live with it. If they need more autonomy than you're comfortable with, don't pretend you're fine. Decide whether that relationship is actually right for you. That's what dating with intention looks like. It's not about forcing someone to fit your comfort. It's about finding someone whose values and boundaries and relationships and expectations can live beside yours. And if they can't, simple enough, walk away. Because love needs more than attraction. It needs alignment. It needs two people who can live under the same emotional agreement without one person feeling trapped and the other feeling unsafe. So again, I don't have a clean answer to the phone transparency, privacy, and attractive acquaintances. But I do have this. Your partner should not have to live in confusion to prove they trust you. And you should not have to live under control to prove you love them. That is the line. Or at least that's where I would start looking for it. Look honestly at what transparency means to you, what privacy means to you, and whether your version of safety gives love room to breathe. And then ask yourself whether you've been requesting reassurance or reaching for control. On the other side, be honest about whether you're protecting autonomy or hiding behind privacy. And if you're dating right now, have this conversation sooner rather than later. Because this is the kind of thing people ignore in the beginning and then fight about that brings the end. That is it. That is all I have to say about this. Or maybe there's more. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me. I am forever grateful to each and every one of you. And if you want help figuring out your own blueprint, or you want to learn more about the blueprint method, you can go to joeyfrancis.com. That's joeyfrances.com. There you can find my books, learn more about my work, and reach out if you want to talk about your own dating life, relationship patterns, or the things you're trying to understand about yourself. And you too can also suggest an episode just like this one. And I honestly hope that this helped. I will leave you with this. Trust doesn't grow in confusion, and love doesn't survive control. Till next time.